Understood what Whittle was going on about, but he saw Whittle's ideas as a threat.
The air enters here and is squeezed by the compressor. Then, fuel is pumped into the combustion chamber and mixed with the compressed air. The burning mixture, at about 800 degrees, exits out the back and creates plenty of thrust. At the same time, hot gas spins the turbine blades, which are linked to the compressor.
And there is the problem, you see. There isn't an alloy in the world that can withstand the kind of temperature you'll have in that turbine. The blades will simply melt.
But I'm sure suitable alloys can be developed.
Not for decades, if at all. How fast will a plane go with one of these engines pushing it along?
Faster than any plane today. 500 miles per hour is in easy reach. If you look at my calculations,
you made a mistake. The thrust of the jet would be half what you estimated. So even if the engine could be built, it would never get itself off the ground. Never mind, drive a plane at 500 miles an hour.
Sir, I believe in the jet engine.
I'm sure you do, Whittle. But it's totally impracticable.
Griffith, in fact, was working on his own version of the jet, but his version still had a propeller. He was only halfway there. The result was, though, that Whittle was not given any government backing to develop his ideas. But he was determined, so he found himself some private backers and got the jet patented. In 1936, he set up a company to develop the jet. But it was by then 7 years since he'd first put forward the idea, years in which his patent and the details were freely available to everyone. The first successful jet-powered flight took place in 1939, but Whittle wasn't involved. The world teetered on the brink of the Second World War, and the world-beating new plane was German. So, the first plane ever to fly with one of these spooky engines was the Heinkel, which had been designed by a man called Hans von Ohain. Great. Luckily, there was one big drawback with the Heinkel HE-178. It could only fly for 6 minutes before the whole engine needed rebuilding. A brave attempt then, but not exactly a practical flying machine. Just days after von Ohain's flight, Hitler invaded Poland, and with the stakes raised, the British government finally realized jet fighters might be useful after all. Finally, Whittle had real backing. And so, 10 years after proposing the jet, a prototype was built. And just 2 years later, in 1941, a new jet plane, the Gloucester, was ready. Trials were hampered by bad weather, and many, even the test pilot, were doubtful the plane would ever get off the ground. But finally, on the evening of the 15th of May 1941 at RAF Cranwell, the first ever British jet plane clawed its way into the sky. This is the actual moment, and an amateur cameraman recorded the event, which went without a hitch. In its first 17 minutes aloft, this little Gloucester soared to 30,000 feet and baffled local residents.
Well, I just come down to do my usual spot of gardening after tea. I was going along merrily and heard the whistling noise. Couldn't think what it was. Looked up and saw a plane coming. When it got overhead, I noticed there wasn't a propeller. So I downed tools and ran in the house to tell everybody I'd seen an aeroplane without a propeller. Of course, nobody believed me.
Whittle's jet plane had a top speed of 370 miles an hour, the same as the Spitfire. But soon, jet planes were able to fly almost twice as fast as their piston-engined ancestors. Whittle's sums had been right all along, and the jet age was almost underway. If Whittle had taken a royalty on every jet engine ever made, which is something he was entitled to do, well, you can forget the Sainsburys and the Rousings and the Duke of Westminster. He would have been rich beyond the dreams of avarice. But he gave it all away for the greater good. Or rather, the British government took it away and gave it to Rover. Yup, some visionary in the Air Ministry decided to take responsibility for developing the jet away from Whittle, who knew what he was doing, and give it to a company that didn't. Rover made a complete mess of it and put the jet engine, rather predictably, in a car. Luckily for us, the Germans were just as inept. It wasn't until 1944 that they were able to produce jet-powered fighters. Too little, too late. The war was all but over. The struggle to bring his jet to life had taken its toll on Whittle. He suffered a mental breakdown and was discharged from the RAF. He died in 1996. Gate 20. My quest is at an end, at the end of the tunnel. There's no light, but there is my gate. Frank Whittle may no longer be around, but his invention has thrived. It is now going to whisk me across the Atlantic to New York, and then on to Los Angeles, and then a quick, well, slightly quick, hop across the Pacific to Tahiti, and then the homeward leg through Auckland, Sydney, and via Singapore, back to London. My first flight to New York will take around 7 hours. 7 hours on a plane. 7 hours. Shall I have another vat of champagne? Right, I've been on the go now for 6 hours, and I must say I'm giving serious thought to joining the Mile High Club. I just had the stupidest dream. I dreamt I'd accepted an invitation to fly around the world in 5 days. As you can probably tell, I'm bored. And that's because in my day, when I was growing up, you used to be able to get across the Atlantic in 3 hours. Now, it takes more than twice that.
Britain's aircraft industry may have a winner in the Comet.
Before Concorde, there was a plane named after a heavenly body best known for falling in a huge fireball into the ground. Yet at the start it all looked so hopeful. The vision was that ordinary people would benefit from the white heat of Whittle's technology.
The first commercial jet service across the Atlantic is established, and BOAC are flying it.
Introduced in 1952, the Comet was not only fast, quiet and comfortable, it was very, very cool. It symbolized the dawn of a new age in passenger aviation. What fascinates me most of all, though, about those early days is the passengers. Because these guys woke up one morning and found that they could have breakfast in Saint-Tropez and lunch in St. Moritz, and then, if they wanted it, dinner in St. Albans. As a result of that, The idle rich got themselves